Welcome to the day 10 and it's very important day today. We get started with talking about classes. We'll talk about how do we construct objects in using this class as a template, using constructors. We'll talk about the static versus instance. So all these important concepts will be done today in a hands-on manner. So make sure that you're watching the entire video with the focus and with the energy and zeal that you have started. Let's commit the today video in the same way around the instances and static. Static instance we've already talked about, right, in basic sense. Static is always belongs to the class and instant they always belong to the objects. So now since we are getting started with the OOPS concept, let's first of all understand what is the difference between the class and the object. So sir, again if I go and repeat, if we have to go and solve the problems of the real world has two challenges. The first challenge of the real world is that it comprises of the real world entities. For example, it will have the human beings. It will have the non-living things, say for example car. And both these living and non-living things, they have something called as a state and they have something called as a behavior. For example, this guy can eat, which is a behavior. This guy has an age, which is like a state. This guy has a name. For example, the car has a name. The car has a color. And it also has a behavior. For example, it can apply brake. It can accelerate itself. Now, if I have to go and solve this real world problem, I have to have some way that it is represented in the world of programming. So in the world of the programming, to represent this real world entities, object-oriented programming like Java, they have introduced a concept called as objects. Right? Object is basically the personification of these real world entities, living or dead, in the world of the programming. And the object says that I will also have a state and I will also have a behavior. I will go and represent state in the form of the fields, right, and the behavior with the help of methods. That's number one. And the second challenge that you have is that in the real world, for doing anything, you have something called as a relationships. So in the world of the program, if you have to go and solve it, it has to be represented in the form of the OOPS, object-oriented principles. You go and call it as object-oriented principles. It's called as object-oriented principle. That's number one. And this is number two. Fair enough. I'm clear on this. Now, we know that everything is revolving around the objects. So what are these actually the objects? And then we have another term called as a class. And then we have something called as an object. This is one of the most basic concepts. And I feel you have to be clear because many of the time what happens, even if you know what class and object is, when the interviewer asks, it's there in your stomach but you're not able to explain it. So let's be very clear and crisp in defining these terms so that we have a good conceptual understanding and we are able to explain if asked in the interviews well. Let's first talk about what the class is. Class in very simple term is called as a template or type. And when I go and talk about the objects are considered to be the instance of classes. What does that mean? Let's see with the help of an example. Let's say that we know that every person in this world, should have some kind of, every person should have a name, every person should have an age, and then every person eat and every person dance, right? So this is true about every person. But when I go and talk about a specific guy, and let's say that this person, the value of the name is Vishwa The age is 99 years. He eats fast when it comes about the eating habit, and then he dances slow. Let's say there's another person, right? And let's say this person name is Shivani. Age is 97, eats slow and dances fast. So I know that every person should have a name, age, they can eat, they can dance, and then when I go and talk about the specific persons, about Vishwa, age 99, or Shivani, age 97, these specific instances are called as objects. And this template from which these objects are created, this will be called as a class. So classes are basically the template, and these are the objects are basically the instances which got created from the class. These are the instances. So from one class you can create as many instances as possible, because instance is created multiple times by setting up the values, and that's why I go and say that classes are nothing but the templates or the types. And when you go and put the concrete values into it, that typically is called as instance or an object. So the relationship between the class and object is that object is an instance of the class. What is an object? Object is an instance of the class. Another example, if I go and give the, let's say one of the class example could be, say for example, car. Every car should have a name, should have a brand, should have a color, right? And if I go and talk about the objects, one of the objects would be like, say for example, one of the car, specific car, and whose name is I-20, whose brand is Hyundai, whose color is red, right? Color is red. Another instance could be another car, and let's say that it is I-Sports, right? Brand is, let's say for example, BMW. Let's say the color is equals to black. And like as many instances that you want to go and create, you can go and create it. So now since we have understood what is class and object, now it's time to actually go and write code and deeper into it. So now we have jumped to the Eclipse directly, and let's try to see that the concept of the class and the object that we have seen, how we can do with the help of the code itself. So I go to my package, and here let me go and create a class called as person, right? Let me go and provide a class called as person. Fair. So let's suppose that I have to go and represent a real world person, right? Let's say that there's any person that I have in the real world. That guy will have a name. That guy will have an age, right? That guy will have a field called as a height. What is the height of that person? These are the three fields. And then we'll have certain behavior, like that person should be able to speak, that person should be able to eat, that person should be able to dance. Now, if I have to go and represent this in the world of the programming, I have to go and take help of the class. So now this is the class person. And one thing that I've already mentioned, the name of the class should be the name of the Java file that we are creating, right? And it is always started with the capital letter. Now, since I have to go and entertain these fields, name, age, height, speak, eat, dance, let's try to go and create the class here. So inside this class, let me go and add those fields. For example, the field should be like string name. Fair enough. Then the field should be, say, like for example, int age. Then it should be, for example, float height. Fair enough. So these are the fields which basically will define that, what will be the state of that. And then I have to go and define this behavior also, right? He should speak, he should eat, he should dance. So for that I can go and say that here. Let me go and clean all of this stuff. So I'll go and write here public void, and I go and say that speak. Inside that I can go and say sys out. My name is and then I went from name. I'll go this is out. My age is, and then I go and add age. My height is, and then I go and add height. Fair enough. So this is I'm going to define the speak method. Similarly, I can have the other methods like, for example, public void eat, and I can go and say that this out. I am eating. I can also have a method, for example, public, copy paste this, put it here, public void. Now one thing that you want to put here is that since I already have a method named eat, if I try to go and exactly repeat this, it's not allowed, right? So two methods exactly same, if I go and repeat it, it's not typically allowed, right? So what I'm going to do now is that change this and let me go and call it as dance and saying that I am dancing. So this is how my class looks like. As you can see on the screen, I have the class keyword present, and then I have fields, and then I have methods. So now, okay, I'm done with creating the class, but then how do I go and create objects from the class? I have been given a class and I want to create the object out of it. How do I do it? So the process of creating the object from the class requires a special type of a method, called as constructors, So for example, if I try to come back here, right? So if I go and talk about the constructors, this has to be present in every class, so that from the class you can go and create the objects. So from the class you go and create the objects, and you do it with the help of something called as a constructors. So constructors are more of like a methods only, sir. They are more of like a methods only, but some special criteria. What are those? First, the name of the constructor should be same name as of the class. The name of the constructor should be same as the name of the class. The number two is that constructor should have no return types. When you're defining a constructor, that's like method, you should either have void or you should have to go and provide the data type which will go and return. When I'm talking about the constructor, it should not have any return type. And third, where you'll find some unknown terms, is that you cannot use the terms like abstract or static. Static you have already heard, or the term like final, or the term like synchronized. These are the few terms which we will go and see as we move ahead, but these terms are not allowed in the constructor. So let's try to go and create one constructor with our own hand and try to see that how it works. So what I'll go and do is that I'll go to my Eclipse, and here I'll go and define a constructor here. So I go and say that public, and name of the constructor should be name of the class itself. So I go and say that person, and I go and define this. What you see here right now on the screen, this section, this typically is called as the constructor. And you can see here there is no return type, and the name of this guy person is matching with the name of the class. These two are matching. Name of this constructor and name of this class is always matching. Now let's try to see that how do we go and create a object out of it. So let me do that. Let me save this. Okay, anyways, I'll go and save this. Yeah. So let me go and define another class called as person resides on earth. So let me go and define a class called as an earth. And inside this, let me go and define a method called as public static void main string args. Fair enough. So I have this person class, and then this I have this earth class. And inside this earth class, let me go and initialize a person object. It means that I want to go and create a person object. So how do we do it is that first of all, we go and say that I have to first of all go and create a person, right? Let's say that I am saying that I have to go and create a variable which is of the type person. This variable that you see on the screen right now is called as a reference variable. And right now it is referencing to nothing. Right now it is referencing to nothing, and source value will be equals to null. Let's try to see that if that is true. Just to check if what is the value here. Right now if I go and do that sys out and print person here, it is giving me some error, right? So if I go and run this, let's try to see what it will say. It is saying that the local variable may not have been initialized. That's correct. This PER is my reference variable and it has not been initialized yet. So how do we go and initialize it? To initialize the instance variable, what we need to do is we go and say that person equals to new, and I go and call it as person. You remember in my previous class, here I have this constructor that I created, and the same constructor I am calling here, right? The same constructor I am trying to go and call here. New means that I am trying to create a new object using constructor, and this is the constructor which we have in hand right now. So sir, this is how I go and create the object. But let me do one thing. No, let's say that if I go back and let's say that for some reason if I go and delete this whole constructor itself, we go and delete it, right? And here also if I still go and see, I still see this is not giving error out. See, I have deleted the constructor, but still in the earth.java when I am calling this constructor, I am not giving an error. What does that mean? It means that whatever that I had previously, this is a definition of a default constructor. Every class in Java that you go and create, they will have a concept called as a default constructor. If you don't specify it, it will be present. If you specify it, it will not be present, right? So even if I go and remove this, this will not error out because every class in Java has something called as a default constructor. Fair enough, clear till this point. Now let's move on. So I have created this person object, and now let me go and call the, since person has a behavior called as speak, I can go and call this speak method on it. So let me go and call it as person.speak. Fair enough. This is my speak method, and I don't have to print. Actually, I can just go and call person.speak. If I go and run this, I see the output. Can you see this output in the bottom? It is saying that it was printing my name is Da, my name is age, my height is height. So it's printing my name is, it was trying to print my name is null, my age is 0, my height is 0. Why it is showing null? Why it is printing 0, 0? It is because with this I created an object called as person, but this person attribute called name, I have not set any value. So the default value that has been set as a null. I have not set any value of the age, so the default value is set as 0. I have not set any value of height, so the default value has been set as 0.0. So now if I want to make any kind of meaningful result, I'll have to go and set the values of this field. So one of the way of doing it is that once the person object is created, I can go and set those values. I can go and say that person.name equals to Vishwa. I can go and say that person dot age equals to 99, and go and say that person dot height equals to 6.o. And now since I have added, right, let me wait, it's giving, that's a float type, so I'll have to go and suffix it with float. And now if I go and run this again, I see the values are now coming up. So the object that I have created using this syntax, this person has a name Vishwa, this person has a age of 99, this person has a height of 6.o. Fair enough? Am I clear? Does. Now, this doesn't look very smooth. Even though I have made use of constructor, I have to set the state multiple times. Correct. Sir, constructor in Java is very powerful. It's more of like a god because creating the objects in the world of the programming. So constructors are more of like a god of the programming. So we can make use of constructor to do more things. So I can leverage constructor to have the initial state of the object. What it means to say that instead of we actually setting the values of the name, age and the height, that could be done by the constructor themselves. Let's try to see that if that could be possible. So I go back and try to change the same code. Let me go and comment out this portion of the code so that it's there for our record, right? And I go back and let's go and define now the new constructor. So in this person constructor itself, I can go and initialize the state, right? So I can go and say that name equals to Vishwa, age equals to 99, and then I want to say that height equals to 5.11 f. Fair enough. This is done. And now again, if I go and create the person object, let's say that I go and create a person object, get person p1 equals to new person. And if you see here in this line, I have done both the initialization. If you see here, unlike the previous step, here I have done both the declaration and initialization together. I have done both initial declaration and initialization together. So I go and do this, and let's say that I go and create multiple person objects. Person p2 equals to new person. I go and say that person p3 equals to new person. Now three objects that I have created, but if I go and run p1.speak, or I go and say that p2.speak, or go and say that p3.speak, if I run this, I see that all this time, if I go and take about any of these, and all this time, here also it is printing name is Vishwa, height is 5.11. Here also it is printing my name is Vishwa, height is 5.11. Here also it is printing the same thing. So even though I have creating the multiple object, but everyone is getting the same copy, everyone is getting the same state. So this way of initializing in the constructor is not very it's not very the way that we wanted. So there's another concept called as a dynamic initialization of objects, right, where we make a parameterized constructor. What do? We do the parameterized constructor. So we can make this more elegant by making a small changes in the code itself. So again, if I go and comment this portion of the code, let me go and comment this out, and then I come here in the person, and here what we do is instead of taking all this thing inside, what I can do is that I can just remove, and I can say here string name, int age, and float height. Now if you see here, all the parameters that I have passed is matching to the field names. Now that doesn't have to be necessarily done, but it normally you should follow so that there is no confusion as such. And now what I want is that every time someone is calling this constructor, whatever the name, age and height is passed, that will be set to the name, age and the height. So what I'll do here is I'll go and say that this dot name equals to name, this dot age equals to age, and then I'll do this dot height equals to height. Now few important things here. I'm making use of this keyword called as this. This refers to the instance or the object that will be created by calling this constructor. What I'm trying to say here is that when somebody calls this constructor, what will happen? Object will be created. So it's saying that that object which will get created, that object name should be this name. That object that will be created, that's age, will be this age. That object which will be created, that height should be this height. So now once we have this, let me move to the, let me save this. Let me move to the earth class. Now in the earth class right now, if I go and try to do something like this, person p equals to new person, now it has started giving me the error. Some time back I told you that every person, every class that you have has a default constructor, but that is only true till the time you have not defined yourself. As soon as you go and define your own custom constructor, right, your default constructor is no more present. Again, this is a very important question that could be asked in the interview, and again also when you're building the projects, this has to be kept in the brain. Fair enough. So now I come back to this earth.java. I cannot use that, so I have to go and provide this. So now I can go and say the person p1, let me go and call the person is Vishwa, right, and the name of the Vishwa is Vishwa 99 and then 5.11. Right, this is the value that I have to provide. Similarly, let me go and create the another person object. Let me go and call that as Shivani. Shivani, this value is capital SHAVINI, right, and this is 98, 5.5. Now if I go and call this functions like Vishwa dot method call as speak, or I go and say that Shivani dot speak, we will find that there's a little difference. We'll find that there's a little difference. If I go and run this, it's saying that Vishwa, right? If you go and see here in the bottom, for the first object it is saying my name is Vishwa, height is 5.11, and this is for the second object which is Shivani. Fair enough? Cool. So we have seen how the constructors are used, and we have also seen that how the objects could be created from the class using the constructor. Now let's talk a little bit more around the constructor. So let me go and define another class, and let's talk about. So let me go and define a class, new Java class. Let me go and call it as a students. Now in a class you can have more than one constructor. For example, if we go and define a default constructor called as public student, this is an example of a default constructor, and let's say that it has some fields like string name and then something called as a int age. It's a default constructor. Another constructor that I can do is that I can go and say that public student, and I will pass the string name, and I will say that this dot name equals to name. I can have one more constructor which can takes both the arguments, public student string name int age, and this value will be this dot name equals to name, this dot age equals to age. So a class can have multiple constructors. I'll again repeat, if you don't provide any constructor, it will have a default constructor which looks something like this, which is on the screen right now. As soon as you go and define any other constructor, this will be removed. Java will not provide by default, but you can explicitly yourself go and create it. So this is a constructor 1, this is a constructor 2, this is a constructor 3. When there are more than one constructor, this is called as a constructor overloading. Right? When there are more than one constructor, that word is typically called as a constructor overloading. Now there are a few important questions that could be asked from the constructor. Can I call one constructor inside the another constructor? Can I do this? Okay, so let's say that, let's try to do this if that is possible. Let me go and define another constructor called as public student, and let me go and take it as int age and string name. And here what I go and do, I'd be going to call the another constructor called as student, and then let me go and pass. Since I have a name which takes the name, I go and pass here the name, and then I go and say that this dot age equals to age. Now if I see here, if I'm trying to call this constructor like this, I'm giving some kind of compilation error. To remove this, if I go and try to do this, where I go and say that this dot student, will this work? It's not working. So what should we do now? So what do we do now? Instead of doing this, we remove this keyword itself, right? And what we have is this keyword. So this keyword is actually used to go and call one constructor inside the another constructor, and this is also called as a constructor chaining. You can go and call one constructor inside the another constructor, and that is called as the constructor chaining. Calling one constructor inside another is called as a constructor chaining. Fair enough. So now since we have done it, there are a few common questions people ask you, that does constructor return any value? No, constructor does not have any return type, but yes, it returns the newly object that you created. Apart from creating objects and initializing state, do we do anything else in the constructor? Yes, you can do anything that you want to do inside the constructor. So these are a few important questions that you should keep in the mind. Now one common question that again gets asked in the interview is that what is the difference between the constructor and a method, right? Let me go and expand this here. As you can see here, I've created a small chart to explain the same, right? So I think you should be able to see it. If I go and talk about the constructor, is used to initialize the state of an object. Method is used to expose the behavior of an object. A constructor does not have a return type. The method must have a return type. The constructor is invoked implicitly. In the case if you don't define it, implicitly it will be invoked. The method has to be invoked explicitly. Java compiler provides a default constructor if you don't have any constructor in a class. That's true. The method is not provided by the compiler in any case. There is no concept of the default method that is created in the class. The constructor name must be same as the class name. The method name may or may not be same as the class name. So you can have a method name which is same as the name of the class. No one is stopping you. But there are many methods which name might not match with the class either. So with this, we have a good understanding of the constructor and the methods in Java. So finally, we have come to the end of video 10. In this video, we talked about static versus instance. We talked about classes. We talked about how objects could be created from the classes using special methods called as constructors. It was all in all a good informative sessions. We have said all, we have done all the basic context setting done so that we can get started with the advanced concepts like OOPS. How are you liking this video? Please help me understand with the comments. Like, share, and tell the people to join our community so that we together become a big community of tech enthusiasts. I want all of you people to be among top 1% techies. Let's keep learning.